here. How's it going out there? So today, this morning, started a little late again, but had some things to do this morning. And yesterday I stripped a lot of saws apart, me and my coworker Sam, so I can get more saws done. I'm gonna spend the whole day here today. So right here under my laptop that I got this propped up on are several 572s, 550s, some 395s, 500s, 661. What else do I got? 394. Oh yeah, a whole bunch. Oh, and a big old 3120 big block underneath the laptop there. So yeah, I'm gonna spend the whole day grinding here today, but I wanted to show a little video. A fellow phoned me yesterday that had a 372 done for me, which he absolutely loves. It's his favorite saw, and he's having oiler issues. So I'm going to give you a rundown on the oiler system on the 372 or 371 or 365. This is actually a 365, but the 362, 365, 371, 372 all use the same oiler. Very similar to the 385 and 390 oiler too. So a lot of people don't service their oilers, and they should. People kind of forget about them. You know, it's a main function of keeping your bar and chain in good shape and it cutting good, right? You know, bar wear. You know, bars aren't cheap, but it's nice to keep it going good. We have a really good bar machine at work called the bar shop machine, where I can grind them, pound them, regroove them. But mostly we did that a lot in the old days when you had stellite type tips. You couldn't have removable tips, so my dad used to actually weld the ends of the bars and redo them. But we don't do that anymore. We change tips and I just grind them, and sometimes I'll use my squeezer, but not really much anymore. So anyways, let's get on to this. So the first thing is if you are having an oiler problem, it's not giving you too much, you can always put some gas in the oiler and swish it around and get all the crap out of there. Because when I take saws apart, I look at, I split the cases and look in the oiler compartment. It's full of sawdust and junk, eh? So that's a good thing to do. You can't pull the oil lines out through the oil cap either. So don't try to do that. You'll rip the line, then you're really messed up. So let's get started here. First of all, under the bar plate on these, there is actually a vent which vents the oiler. Now, sometimes here on the coast with that mushy wood, and we got real extreme wet conditions and weather conditions, right? Right there's your vent in between the two bar studs. It's kind of like a little brass piece there. You want to keep that clean. It's got a little groove here to get air into there, eh? To vent it properly. Some of them, so that'll give you enough air in there and keep that clean, and it should vent properly. I've never really had many issues with these ones, but the older style one that just had like a check valve in there or duck bill type thing, I did have some problems with them venting. So what some guys would do, if you notice that your gas to oil ratio isn't quite the same, which most of them aren't, but they're pretty close. What you can do is actually add a vented cap onto the oiler and to the gas tank too if you have venting problems, which we did on 372s and 385s. So years ago I used to put vented caps on everyone's saws, mainly on the fuel, but on the oil once in a while too. Some guys ran them always on the oil too. So you got an extra vent in the cap. So with these caps though, they're from a different model. I believe these were originally used on brush cutters or weed eaters of Husqvarna, but they will fit on all these series of saws. Right up to 3120, right from smaller 300 series right up. But the outer diameter of it is a little too big. So what you do, if you go to your bench grinder, here's one already done, magic, eh? And you just grind around the whole cap to make it fit right. So this washer will work right, and it's not going to leak on you, but it sits down on there right, okay? So that's a good thing to do. Part number 503-828005. We use a lot of these. So if you're having problems like that with venting of your fuel tank and your oil doesn't seem to be as close to 1:1 on your fuel to oil ratio, Try that out. It might work for you. You know, but you still might have a problem with your other. So let's get into this one. They're pretty simple. You take your clip off the crankshaft, and that's something you should have a spare, eh? That and this washer and a bearing if you're out in logging areas or whatever. So most guys do pack extra ones of these. So there's our sprocket. This one's got a fair bit of wear. And if you notice on Oregon sprockets, they have like an indicator line, and that's kind of your maximum you should go, because it starts throwing out a pitch, your chains will fly off, and it starts stretching your chain too. So replace them once in a while. They're only $10 in Canada here. I don't know what they're like anywhere else. Inspect your clutch drum. These things normally last the life of the saw. Husky's built really good clutch drums on their saws for years. This is probably the best clutch and clutch drum system out there. It's nice and thick. You got lots of material. The bearing surface, hard surfacing in there, it doesn't wear out like some stills do. And you'll find that when it starts to rock like that. If you take your finger in there, you can feel that it's rough and there's an edge because that hard surfacing's come off. But these, like I say, almost last the life of the saw. Same with the clutch on a 365, 372, 371. These type of springs never have a problem. Sure, I've had some go, but very rare. That's probably the best clutch system going to. You know, a lot of other saws with the little tiny springs, you're constantly going through them. You know, so it's just a nice system, and they don't overheat. They just seem good. So let's get at this then. Let's get this clutch off. There is a couple different ways of taking your clutch off. This is a tool from Husqvarna, which fits right in there. And you can put a piston stop in or a rope down the spark plug hole like I've showed everyone before. Just don't get it caught in the port though. Be careful. Get it up to top dead center so it's solid. Then simply take this. You can either try it by hand, but more than likely you're not going to do it. You're best to try to hit it with a hammer, or put a round pipe on the end and give her a good and you'll get it off. You know, remember these are left-hand threads, so righty loosey, lefty tighty. So you get the tool on there, give it a smack. I already loosened this one yesterday with the impact, sorry. That's how you do it. Or you can take this tool, which I've done at my shop, take this flat bar off and make it into a socket. Weld a socket on the top of it so you can make it run with your 1/2 inch impact, because that's what you need, a 1/2 inch impact normally to get these off, or a long pipe with that tool. Okay, so righty, loosey. Let's get the clutch off, inspect it. This is actually in really good shape, most of it, except for someone's damaged the piston in it. Either straight gas or overheated it with a dull chain. These clutches too wear perfect. They don't wear uneven like the 390s that have the 3 springs instead of the garter type ones like this. They wear uneven. The clutches, drums don't wear even, so now you get slippage. This was the best system, and they should stuck with it. I get 390s, which you're not going to get too many more of them because we're getting new models. But this is the better one to have. Sometimes they come with the other spring type, and then sometimes they come with this. I wish they'd get their together and figure out which one they want. So now we got the clutch off. Physically look at the pump. Make sure that maybe down the, in the past that someone maybe did break a clutch spring and it ground into the oil pump, which will make it suck air, then it won't pump right. Also check this tube here, your feed tube up to where the bar plate sits, and that's your feed hole for your lubrication to your bar. Okay, so everything in here looks actually really good. Let's take our gear off, which is this plastic type one with the metal driver. The original 371, 372 had a plastic one that had plastic wings on each side. This has got a metal wing. It's a little better setup. Doesn't wear like the plastic ones used to wear, and you'd have to replace them. Okay, so now that the gear is off, the pump looks fine. So let's take the pump off, and I'll show you how to clean it. 4 mil T-bar, 2 bolts, and these bolts should be Loctited or a sealant put on them when you put them back together, because they will suck air a little bit through them screws if you don't. From the factory, they have this red sealant on it. It's not a Loctite, because Husky normally doesn't use Loctite, because some people in the factory are allergic to Loctite, so they don't use it. Not like our still friends there, they seem to use a lot, and sometimes too much. You can hardly get muffler bolts out sometimes and whatnot, but whatever. Maybe they use non-allergenic type Loctite in Germany. Anyways, okay, so got the 2 screws out. Now on these saws, you have a collar in this on the crankshaft, and this collar seals the shaft from sucking air, or the bottom end from sucking air. So this collar here fits into the seal that's into the crankcase of the motor. So you want to make sure that that collar is in there, and there's a little tiny flat washer in there as well. So I'm going to take that off and show you how that works, because sometimes when people rebuild 372s or 365s, they forget how this works. So there's the collar. The worm gear rides on that, and this bottom part of it, the outer part, is where the seal rides. It's a good setup. You also underneath this, there's an O-ring that fits over the crankshaft, and it goes right against the end of the crank, inside of the crank, and that stops air from sucking through that too if that's coming loose. When I put them together, I always put a little bit of liquid gasket maker on these when I put them on, plus the O-ring, just to make sure that it's going to seal good. I've seen some of these aftermarket saws come with no O-ring in there, so they're sucking air instantly, which can wreck the crappy top ends that they have. I won't badmouth all of them. Some of them are good, and some people can only afford stuff like that. It's all good. So take the pump off. I set the chain brake on. Pull this feed tube. Just gonna pry it up. And I'm just gonna try to just pry the pump out. Okay. So I just kind of lift the chain brake band and lift the pump out with that feed tube still attached. Okay. There it is. There's your oil pump. No holes in that feed tube. Sometimes the clutch spring breaks, it'll get a little slice in this tube, and it won't work either. So now that that's off, you can see where the seal is in the crankcase, which looks in okay shape, but this saw will be, I have to talk to the customer about if they want to rebuild it, and if you do, we'll put new seals in it. So drain the oil out of it too, before you do this. Now take your oil line, which is right there, obviously where the pump sits down on it. So take some needle nose, pull that out, inspect that. It's gonna be oily, have a little rag. Okay, so if you do have an oil leak too, sometimes these hoses are got a little hard or soft, and then they start leaking there, and it'll come out. Almost all Huskies leak chain oil. Just deal with it. It's not a big deal. If it's huge, then don't leave oil in it. Put it somewhere you're not worried about it. But smaller Huskies, they're terrible for leaking oil. They got to be the worst saws made for leaking oil, but they run good. Okay, so inspect your hose, make sure it's good. Take the little brass filter off the end. Blow through it, make sure it's all clear. I would use air, but I don't want to turn the compressor on and ruin our sound. That one's nice and clear. Hose. Yeah, tastes like shell oil. Bad year. Okay, it looks fine. So let's check our pump out. Take the feed tube off. Make sure these rubbers are in good shape. Okay, this one already, you can see this rubber is ripped, eh? So it's not going to seal. It was sealing okay, but because I took it off, it kind of ripped. Plus, part of it's actually covering the hole just a tad. So it's good to replace that rubber. Forget the part number of that, but most Husky dealers will have it on their computer. Then you have a little rubber grommet on the top where the the pipe sits into by the bar plate area, above the bar studs, and that should be in good shape too. It's not as important as the bottom one to get the oil up there, okay? So check your pump out. Look in the hole here where the feed line is from the tank, right? And here's your hole on this side where that tube is. What I do is slowly turn this and blow air through where the oil goes in, just lightly, in case there's any obstructions in there. Then I'll blow the other side too, while I'm spinning this slowly. The way this works is the oiler gear spins that pump shaft, okay? So as it spins around, the pump shaft's got a little flat spot, and that flat spot turns around in the pump, and it draws the fuel from the oil tank up to your bar. You have adjustments on it, and the way it works is as you adjust it, it moves that paddle one way so you get more oil. Normally on a 372 or 365 saw, you got this. They always have this style of oiler adjuster, and I don't really like it. I wish they had the one like the 390, which has the 3 clicks, or like Still has, where you can only go maximum or minimum. On these though, sometimes a guy will smash a saw or get something caught and break this off. So what happens then is the shaft of the oiler moves over, because that's the adjuster pin isn't in there anymore, adjuster screw, and then it strips the oiler gear. So your oiler gear teeth get stripped. You see a flat spot on them where they just get ground right down because they're not meshing right on the gear. They're starting to get cut from the edge of the gear instead of meshing. So if you have that situation, you're going to need this new piece here or a whole new pump, depending how it broke. Normally on these, you would set at 1 turn for around 15, 16 inch, 2 turns for like 18 to 20, and 3 turns for up to like 24, and 24 above you'd be 4 turns. And the way they kind of do it, it's not a full turn, they're kind of just half turns. So let's check at this one where it's at. So screwdriver, bar wrench you could use. 1 turn, 2 turns, 3 turns, 4 turns. That one was set at 4 turns. So this is good for long bars. If you go any farther out, this can fall out and it's going to be useless. It's going to break. So that's, turn it all the way in, click it back just 1 notch, 1 little bit there. So it's got this little steel rod there, eh? So that's kind of your indicator. So now I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 flat spots, not full turns, kind of half turns, okay? So you see that, eh? Okay, so that's the maximum you want to do, and these will oil enough for 32-inch bars. They're not really designed for 36-inch bars, but some guys put them on. On my hot rod ones, they'll put them on to do a big tree and then put their small one back on. We pretty much run all 32s and 33s on them here on the coast. Okay, so that's the deal with the oiler. As far as assembling, I would be putting a new rubber piece on this feed pipe, but I don't have one here right now. I'm just going to put this back together. Put your feed pipe back in the oiler. Okay. Don't forget to put the oiler hose back in, or leak oil all over the place. Just put your little bob weight filter back on it. It's weighted, so it moves around in the tank. Catches all the oil. Put it back into the hole. Seat it down so it sits there. You'll take your pump, lift the band up, brake band, and simply place it back on there. Get your little feed hole grommet up top there, that pipe in the spot, and your adjuster in the hole at the bottom of the crankcase here, and just kind of set it down by hand, push it down, lining your bolt holes up. Now you can take your bolt. I'll use Motoseal gasket maker or other types of gasket sealer. I'll put a little bit on it, then put it back on. This one's going to come apart again, so I'm not going to do it right now because this thing needs a rebuild. So put your screws back in. 2 screws. Same on each model. Like I told you at the beginning, 362, 365, 371, 372, 385, 390. It's all the same setup. Torque value, first click of the wrist. Just give it a good one. It's not a D8 cat. You don't need to have a big torque wrench. Just tighten them up by hand with the T-bar. Okay. Now, your sleeve that goes over the crank, which I told you about, that it also connects into the seal. You also want to just make sure when that goes on, it's fitting tight on the seal, and that'll kind of tell you that the seal's still good shape. Sometimes they're wore out and it'll just slide around and you go, oh yeah, this thing's going to suck air. But you should have done a vacuum pressure check anyways. And we're going to do one of those one of these days, and I'm going to show you that. So the sleeve, just make sure you got that washer up against the big end of it, and the big end goes in towards the seal because that's where the seal rides, on the big end of this sleeve. I put a little glue on that too. I'm not going to right now. Kind of put it in there and just turn it kind of as you're pushing it in, and it seats into the seal. Pretty simple. Take your oiler gear after you've inspected it. It all looks in good shape. The wing's good to be driven by the clutch drum. That's how it's driven. So the saw has to be running to give it oil. Set the chain brake back off. Oiler gear on. Just kind of turn it to the clockwise and work it back in there. Away you go. Inspect your clutch, which we already kind of did. There's says off and on. That telling you which way to turn it, so you don't break the crankshaft doing it not left or not righty loosey, but lefty tighty. So just remember that. Left hand thread. Spin it back on. You don't need to really impact this back on hard, okay? Just put it on. They even actually have some little slots, little grooves on here. These little grooves on the clutch here, where it says off with an arrow, you can put a screwdriver right there. Even a bar wrench, okay? You can put a bar wrench or a screwdriver right there and have a piston stop in there and smack with the hammer. Sometimes you can spin it off with that, if you're lucky. But they get on pretty tight sometimes. You gotta sometimes have a big pipe on that tool I showed you, or impact. So I'll just use my 3/8 impact and just give it a little, just rattle it on a little bit. Or you can simply just do what I just showed you and just give it a little tap with your hammer and screwdriver. Then once your clutch drum and everything is on, you can always run it, hit the chain brake, and it self-locks itself. Check your bearing, make sure it's in good shape. Give it some grease. Any grease. They don't have a greasable end through the crankshaft on these models like 390s and 395s and 3120s used to have. A little bit of grease on there. Don't need a lot because the chain oil actually gets in there and lubricates it. Yeah, that's why if you look at sprockets on the inside of them where it goes onto the drum, you see there's little holes in the inside of it. So the chain oil comes in that hole, then it'll run up this way between the washer and the clip and go down in that bearing bit. Doesn't do a lot, but it's enough to try to keep it going. Okay, we've inspected our clutch drum already. We know that's in good shape. So simply put the clutch drum over the bearing now and line it up with the worm gear. You see you got 2 edges on the clutch drum. You just put it on there. Okay, not lined up. Yeah, there we go. You hear it, ding, 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 ding. So that's hitting that gear, eh? You hear the bell? It's gonna work right. Get that on there. Check your sprocket out. This one I would replace for sure for 10 bucks, and it'll save you chain wear and everything and coming off. Washer and clip. Now, a lot of times just to check an oiler, you can run it without the barn chain and make sure it's coming out okay. But you think it's coming out okay, but when you put the barn chain on, it doesn't have enough pressure to push that oil into the bar. You might see it coming out, but it's not enough pressure. So you always want to put the bar and chain on it. And a lot of times with small bars or big bars, if you just have it running and throttling it up, you just have the chain just away from like a white wall or something, or a piece of cardboard or a piece of wood, and you can see the spray of the chain oil coming off. Then you know it's working right. And you'll see as you're running it how much oil you're using compared to gas. Bar plate back on, but always clean that filter area too. I see those get clogged up, then it won't vent right. That's where the vented cap comes in handy. You can just run the vented cap all the time and no big deal. Screw back on the bar plate. And good to go. So that's how you service the Husky clutch drum driven oil pumps. Some saws years ago would use crankcase pressure or even drive off a cam lobe off the crankshafts, like old Still 075s and stuff like that. But I think this system is the best. It works great. Never really a problem with clutches, oil pumps on these. Usually if it's damaged from a clutch spring, that's about it, but that rarely happens as well. So that's it, man. So hey, buddy, hope you figured that out. If yours is working today, I kind of explained to him yesterday on the phone, but I want to do the video for him too, just to show him. He had it all apart to do that. So there you go. So you guys can do this maintenance at home, eh? What did I hear? No? You're not going to? Well, you should. Save money in bar and chains. Okay. Donny Walker out. I got to get porting. I'm staying here the whole day. It's sunshine out. It's supposed to be raining all weekend. Kind of a bummer. My gal Shelly and her mom and sister and daughter are going to a resort up island for a weekend. And I'm going to stay and work on some racing saws and go-kart stuff and myself. So hey, keep a saw on the wood, stick in the ice, rubber on the road. Check out the walkersawshop.com online store, and you can get your little pieces if you need the little rubbers for these or a new sprocket and stuff like that. Okay, have a great day. Out.